Ladies, thank you so much for being here today. And I love that you're presenting on clinician well-being and trends, especially in honor of National Doctors Day. So without further ado, I will hand it off to the both of you. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for having us, Abby, and the Nicollet Foundation team. You have been an incredible partner throughout the evolution of the clinician well-being work. So it is our pleasure and honor to be telling you about our history, where we are today, what our initiatives are within the Health Partners family of care, and also some of the trends that we are seeing in the industry. So I'm going to share my slides, and bear with me because it's always a travesty to figure out if I'm sharing the right slides. And it is thinking, Teams is thinking, so I'm not sure. Okay. And let's see what, do you guys see my slide deck?
You're good.
Yes, it looks great.
Looks perfect.
Thank you.
Perfect. So thank you for introducing us, Abby. And I always like to start with this story, with a story, but this story in particular, because it truly embodies the essence of what we will be talking about today. This is a picture of a remarkable colleague of mine. Those of you on the line, some of you physicians or others will probably know her. She's a urologic surgeon who I first met many years ago in the hospital, cross paths in the hallways. We knew each other, talked a little bit, but that all really changed when I began leading well-being work. And one of the first organizational enterprise-wide clinician well-being initiatives, Connect groups. These groups that you'll hear about a little bit later are designed really to foster deeper connections and support among physicians and community and camaraderie. And through this program that I was leading at the time, many, many years ago, I got to know many doctors, but specifically Dr. Ryder, in a very much deeper way. This group became a really strong source of support for all of us involved, especially because we started it before the pandemic. And during very challenging times, those connections became really a lifeline for all of us. We texted, we checked on each other, we FaceTime, we had outdoors bonfires during the pandemic. And so it really consolidated into something very, very beautiful. At some point, who knows or remembers at some point of the pandemic, she confided in me that she was struggling with many different things, including her practice. So I recommended several of the organizational support programs that we had then, some of which we are going to talk about a little bit later. And I vividly remember when several months later, maybe 6 or 9 months later, she pulled me aside today in the same space around there in the second floor outside of radiology, right by where the surgeons come in and out. She pulled me aside and told me that those resources that I had recommended to her had made all of the difference and had had significant impact and improved her well-being. And over the years, not only we've continued to support each other, but during difficult times, but to support each other and encourage each other to make changes, to take the leap, to ask for the things that we needed, to explore options. And so, first of all, I'm proud to share that she became the department chair of Park Nicollet, and now with the care group, she is the vice chair for the organization-wide urology department. And this picture was a moment that captured, she texted this other doctor and myself to let us know that this was the first day that she was performing a very specialized urologic procedure that she had been advocating for a long time. And she wanted to show us the first day that it was going to be a change in the urology procedures that we were doing at HealthPartners and Park Nicollet. We had encouraged her to engage with leaders to demonstrate the need. And this is really just a story, not of her individual success, but also of us as an organization really investing on clinician well-being and how it can impact not only individuals, but us as an organization, for a physician and clinician that was struggling at a point in time and really considering many options for her career, but decided to invest in herself and to invest in her practice and to invest in our organization. So as I go through this presentation, I want you to consider how this story could have been dramatically different for herself and for us as an organization. And to set a foundation of what we're going to be talking about, I want to talk about a bit of what we see in healthcare workforce trends. There really is a concern around workforce shortage. We really are on the verge of a looming significant physician shortage. Our aging workforce, but also our aging patients, show us that over 2 in 5 physicians will be over the age of 65 in the next decade. And so there's a projected between 35,000 and 120,000 physician shortage by 2034. And most of the gaps will be expected to be in primary care, some key specialties, but specifically in rural areas. And the reality is that this is not only a future problem, but it is a problem that we struggle right now because healthcare access, as you all know, is significantly shortened right now. So this really shrinking workforce will dramatically increase the pressures on an already burnt out, experiencing burnout physician and clinician population. We also know that there's increased costs. That labor is the largest and fastest growing cost in healthcare. What this means is that the investment on our healthcare professional population is really significant. And we know that the burnout leads to turnover, to disengagement, to reduced productivity. And so all of that compounds on labor costs. So every dollar spent addressing physician, clinician, and healthcare workforce professional well-being, it really is a lever for cost containment. And lastly, we know that there's a generational shift, and millennials are now the dominant generation in the workforce, and that Gen Z is right behind. And not only for healthcare, but in general, the workspace, people who are coming into the workplace are bringing new expectations. They are not the same expectations of clinicians that are close to retirement or my generation. There's expectations of flexibility, there's expectations of transparency, psychological safety, purpose. And so the way to think about this is that the work that we do around culture is not fluff. It's really strategic, because we know that 75% of 2024 grads, they review employers before applying. They review employers online, they talk to other clinicians and physicians. And so we know, because we hear in no clinician orientation, we hear when we're interviewing, that organizations they are looking for organizations with reputations of investment in well-being, investment in culture, investment in leadership development and leadership responsiveness. So this is really just to show that the data is clear, that workforce shortages are a reality. The raising costs on labor and the investment and the value that we provide our workforce will significantly impact our ability to perform, to achieve our mission and values, and that clinician well-being is really at the intersection of all of that. And I want to spend just a moment here, because we know that burnout is not new, but it's also not getting better. that burnout rates among physicians have remained persistently high over the last several years. Interestingly, peaking around 2023, which was about 2 years or 2.5 years after the pandemic started. This is the first year, 2024, because we haven't done the 2025 surveys. This is the first year that it's starting to improve because there's been a lot of investment in the healthcare workforce. It became a business imperative for the majority of healthcare environment to invest in the healthcare workforce. And so this is the first year that it really has dipped down just a little bit. We also know that burnout and depression are very distinct, but that often coexist because unattended burnout can lead to more chronic stress, to more chronic impact like anxiety and depression. And this really underscores the emotional toll that practicing medicine in our healthcare workforce in general, the professionals are experiencing. The reality is that these are not just, we see them and we know that these are not just personal struggles, but they remain system signals, right? Because this is a signal of the system dysfunction, the lack of control, misaligned values, broken feedback loops, unmanageable workloads. And so we really need to be paying attention to these system signals and address, and you'll see how we do it in a multi-directional approach. And what we know and that what we see also in our organization, but across the nation, is that there's a gender disparity. When we were talking with Abby about important things to highlight was the female physician experience. We know that this burden is not evenly shared. We know that there's 56% versus 44% in 2024 of higher burnout rates in female physicians and clinicians, higher than their male counterparts. And like everything else, this gap really peaked around 2023. And so we have to start going in the underbelly and name and understand and support what's underneath this gap. We know that women in medicine are burdened with cultural expectations of work, family, dynamics, but also microaggressions, inequitable career advancement opportunities. Expectations from patients are different from physicians who are female, who identify as female, or who identify as male. So really these trends are for us to look at because they direct our attention and they let us know that these trends are urgent, but also actionable. And the reality is that behind every data point here, there's a clinician like Dr. Jocelyn Ryder, a clinician like myself, those who are on the call. They may be your doctor, they may be your colleague or your sister, or your family member. And that by investing in clinician well-being, we're not only protecting those individual clinicians, but we are impacting certainly our organization, but the healthcare environment and the communities that we serve. So what are we doing? And HealthPartners Park Nicollet. We like to use this slide because it demonstrates the how we're coming to our work. We are coming at it with a lot of explicit intention. We're coming with moral clarity. We're coming with the ethical knowledge that this is important work for the lives of the individual clinicians. But we also come with a willingness to try, to fail, to see what's working, to see what's not working. And we like to say that this is why we've paired the work with our quality improvement partners like Quinn and her team. because we want to be very rigorous about understanding what our population needs, what our clinicians and physicians and clinician needs, and really extend to the healthcare workforce professionals in general. And we're willing to try and change. And with that in mind, we went through a process of engaging with our own teams. Several years ago, we went through our first design event. We went through a process of bringing many team members together, physicians, clinicians from across the enterprise, from different geographical areas, from different times of experience, amount of work that they've done in the healthcare space, and also a lot of the shared services support. And we realized that while we had a lot of work in many areas of the organization, we kind of lacked a cohesive organizational approach to this work. We wanted to explore how we tie it all in together. And in this day event, we came up with many different areas and initiatives that throughout the years we've finessed. And as we move forward from that day, I want to emphasize that many of the work that the organization is doing is distributed. The amount of work that our organization is investing in physician and clinician well-being and healthcare workforce well-being is impressive. This is not for you to look at every single line that it's showing, but really see the detail and the care and the strategic planning that we have put into improving physician and clinician satisfaction, and that it extends well beyond the initiatives that Quinn and I will be honing in today. And what you see here is an extreme simplification of the vast efforts across the organization. This is a way for us to organize the work, to demonstrate the many areas and the multi-pronged approach that we are taking to investing in being and setting us apart to being a top workplace destination. And so with that in mind, we will start with very specific initiatives that we've implemented and that we are continuing to finesse and expand, very specific initiatives within our organization. Firstly, we heard that our physicians and clinicians, especially as we become a more expansive and consolidated healthcare system, that they wanted to see and connect with those who are making decisions. Their department leaders, but also senior leaders, executive leaders. And so they said, we want to improve that feedback loop. So moving forward, we've created this infrastructure around clinician town halls. You've seen that our executive team is doing All Colleague Connects. Now, there's a specific area for our physicians and clinicians and our care group delivery teams that are experiencing very specific things throughout their workday. And so we wanted to connect them with their physician and clinician leaders. And it's been widely successful. We've done all clinician town halls. Now we're moving into service line town halls because we want clinicians who belong in a specific area of the organization, operational area, to connect with the senior leaders who have operational responsibilities over their work days. And it's been incredibly and widely successful. And we're continuing to hone in on the delivery of that. And we continue to improve and expand. Again, with the goal of improving that feedback loop, we had heard, many of you know, or many of you might not know, that we have a specific physician and clinician engagement survey. this engagement survey has very specific questions around the experience of caregiving, which is different than our all engagement survey because it really hones in the physician and clinician experience, which is just a bit different than in general an engagement and all employee engagement survey. And this is, again, building on our commitment to enhance that bidirectional communication. And so what we heard is we respond to the survey, and then after responding to the survey, it is not very system-wide that we know, or there are pockets of the organization that were doing different teams that were doing different things, and some team members were not hearing back what happened with our responses, what happened with our feedback. So we've created a lot of resources for department leaders, and we've created a lot of infrastructure around the engagement survey so leaders and teams can utilize these resources to elevate that dialogue, to support that dialogue for teams and understanding what's working well, what are areas of opportunities, and how, as an organization, we can support those teams to have that ongoing and continuous feedback loop between those in the front lines with the department chairs, the department leaders, and our organization as a whole. And next, I'm going to pass it on to Quinn to tell us about one of our incredibly exciting and heartwarming initiatives. Quinn, and I'll just keep moving the slides, so if you want to tell me when to move the slides,
Okay.
just go ahead and tell me.
Yeah, our next initiative we started for peer-to-peer network was actually, I think, the most heartwarming. There were two really great moments in this. The first was we put out an open call for notifications to nominate people. So, what we heard was we need support from peers with lived experience. So we wanted to develop a formal network. We actually solicited training from a national expert, Dr. Joe Shapiro from Boston, in the training to create this network for people to reach out. This does not replace other services that we offer through EAP, and we'll talk a little bit about vital work life. But this is really to say something happened today. I'd like to talk to someone. Sometimes I know it's nice to talk to someone outside your department who maybe doesn't know about all your things, but wants to, they're just there to listen a little bit. So when we originally put this out, we had 82 clinicians nominated by them, a colleague, or nominated by themselves. And in fact, several were nominated by multiple people. And reading these nominations was just a testament to these individuals, how their peers thought of them, and the need for this work. You can see here some excerpts of some of those nominations for those individuals. So once we had nominations, we really tried to look across these. We needed to have a smaller initial group to start with for training. We looked at, again, and Natalia said for our group, our steering committee, we've really tried to be representative of people at different points in their career, different experience with clinician well-being work, different parts of the organization. So really tried to look at that when we selected those peers, in addition to just these beautiful notes about these individuals. So this is a really exciting thing. We had a wonderful training in the fall of that year where, again, there's some clinicians that I've worked with for many years, just some beautiful moments and really validating in the fact that this was going to be a supportive resource for individuals. So the way it works is really, we've got a website, everyone is listed. You can say, I need someone, I click on it, we'll send an automatic email to that individual and they'll get back to you within about a day. So you can connect and have that conversation. So we're excited with this. We're looking to say, how might we expand this to a more proactive approach, thinking about root cause analysis and other situations where we really want to proactively support our clinicians in difficult situations that they've had. Next slide. I mentioned briefly, so we do have our internal employee assistance programs. We also have a contracted vendor, Vital Work Life, that offers a number of enhanced services for our clinicians. So you can see here, I think there's some great things here where clinicians have been able to reach out to meet with peer coaches. So again, we're looking at needing support for work-life integration, ease of access to mental health resources, etc. With these services, and these continue to expand, they're able to reach someone and get support right away instead of, access internally for resources can be more limited. We've got some updated year-end numbers that just came in last week, so we can update this slide, but really have enhanced this. We expanded it to include all of our clinicians across Park Nicollet, a broader group of clinicians across Park Nicollet and HealthPartners, so continue to see increased uptick in utilizing these services to support clinicians. Next. Natalia talked about Connect groups a little bit at the beginning. So she was lucky enough to be part of the pilot group, and then COVID stopped a lot of things for folks. So when we came back together in our steering committee, one of the big things was we feel really isolated. And so what we did was initially we opened up 3 different options for Connect groups. So Natalia was part of one that was across departments, potentially across locations. We said, okay, our system is really big. We've got lots of locations. So maybe we offer one that's virtual so folks in other areas can participate. But in fact, we've mostly had local groups sign up, which I think if you look at the first comment, we feel isolated. People felt isolated even in their unit and in their clinic. And so this has been an opportunity for people to really connect with those that they work with in a deeper way. So what these are, it's once a month, the group gets together over a meal. Our foundation, we are very thankful that the Park Nicollet Foundation is supporting this work to compensate for a meal. There are some structured questions that build on each other over each of the different months. And people are able to do so. These are some of the comments from participants, but we had one come in the other day where someone was saying they were just having a terrible day. They were near tears, and coming to the group and feeling heard and seen by their peers and having that time with them to decompress changed the course of the day and the course of their week for them. So that was just amazing. We had hoped to have my initial grant was to have 10 groups signed up within a year. We had 10 groups signed up within, I think, 2 months. So in fact, we continue to expand this program. We've made some adjustments. So some groups are meeting a little less frequently, but they're still following the cadence. And in fact, this has been so successful. We have 2 groups that we will be building out. What does phase a third year of this program look like for those groups? So at the end of the first year, we quickly heard, well, we want to keep going. This is so meaningful for us. We're connecting in ways with our team that we haven't been able to in a long time or ever. How can we continue to have these touch points? So really happy with how these have worked. And again, this is entirely voluntary. So it's exciting to see people feel like we've offered something that's really fitting a need for a lot of people. Next slide, Natalia. I'm going to keep going because I want to make sure that we have time for some questions. We have a My Partner site that we continue to add resources to, where you can see each of the buttons for our services or areas. We also link to our internal EAP programs and Vital Work Life that, depending on which part of the organization is your home organization, will take you to those appropriate resources. We'll also be updating our AMGA to our new AMA survey coming up as we get ready to move those results out for folks. Next slide. And then lastly, I think this is our last slide, Natalia, so I'll let you wrap up after this if it's not, but this is kind of a trajectory. So in the fall of 2022, we started with a task force and said, how might this look in our organization? We really, I think one thing I want to recognize, we focused on positive. We didn't come in and say, what are all the things that are wrong? We came in and said, what are we doing well and what do we need? And our group has really functioned in that way this whole time, from the things we started to work on in 2023, what we really started to build out in 2024, where we're going, that really positive feel of, again, I was in a working session with some clinicians 2 weeks ago, and one of them said, I feel like this work could make us a destination organization for clinician well-being. And I said, I think you read my slide in a presentation at some point, because you're right. We really want this to feel like we are growing it from the ideas and needs of our clinician team members. We are expanding and responding to the programs that people are looking for. And we're holistically trying to bring in different pieces, knowing that different types of programs or needs resonate with people at an individual level very differently. So how do we continue to add things that expand what we've got currently, but continue to fill the gap of other services for people? Natalia?
Most importantly, I think, to end with gratitude. Gratitude to really the Nicollet Foundation, and to gratitude to our executive team, who has declared that this is a top priority for our organization, and that we should be investing in an infrastructure that has, Quinn and I leading the charge, but really connected throughout the organization to the highest decision makers throughout our strategic planning. And it is a top priority for our organization. And again, for us to be creating a comprehensive program that impacts individual lives, but also we know that impacts our organization as a whole, with the support of the foundation, to really is the underpinning of many of these programs. And so to really understand that our healthcare workforce and the physicians and clinicians and every single healthcare professional is at the heart of everything that we do, is a significant way for us to see the clinician well-being work within the organization and who we want to be in our strategic plans for 2030. So with that in mind, and with a couple of minutes left until 9:45, we open it up to chatting, actually. And I don't know, Abby, if you had questions that were posed before, or if anyone has, questions already in the Q&A or the chat.
Well, thank you both so much for such a wonderful presentation. And I loved hearing the words joy and fulfillment as being the goals of the clinician well-being infrastructure and program. And that's so important, because at least from what you were sharing with us, and like what I'm beginning to understand, is that our caregivers cannot feel fulfilled if they don't feel like their cup is being filled as well, and stuff like that. I do have one question. Are there organizations doing clinician well-being work well that you view as a role model to aspire to? What are they doing differently from their peers?
Absolutely. One thing that is, and why we put that slide in the beginning, is that the clinician well-being world and science is in its infancy. And while we have been talking about it for a very long time, if we think of how we build infrastructures around different strategic approaches, it's really in its infancy stages. So many different organizations are trying many different things and are putting out there significant improvements. There's a conference that I've been going now for an incredible amount of time. I think that the first time that I went to it was 2016, so it's almost a decade now. It's called the American Conference on Physician Health, which it was put together in general, either American or international, either by AMA BMA, British Medical Association, and Canadian Medical Association, when it's international, where people from around the world come to engage and connect around what is being done for physician and clinician well-being, because we know that this is really not only a national crisis and intention, but really a world crisis and intention, especially as we went through the pandemic. But every other year, the Stanford Well-MD, Well-PhD, Mayo Clinic, and American Medical Association with the American Conference of Physician Health. There are many organizations that are leading the charge, doing very interesting things. Among them, the Well-MD, Well-PhD, which had the first chief wellness officer in the nation, Dr. Tate Shanafelt, many years ago. Quinn and I both, at different stages, did the director course. Other organizations, Mayo Clinic, and I engaged with their director here through leading the Minnesota Medical Association Physician Wellbeing Advisory Committee. There are many different organizations that are doing incredible amount of work. One thing that was very insightful by Dr. Tate Shanafelt, when we've engaged with IHI, we did system impact leadership course around well-being. It really is exploding in this field in healthcare industry. But it was interesting. One very important thing that Dr. Tate Shanafelt said many years ago was that clinician well-being programs not only have to decide what they're going to do, but what they're not going to do, because the work is so extensive that if we try to boil the ocean, it is really hard to identify what's working and what's not working. And so it is incredible since we started this work. Quinn and I and others get emails, requests, ideas really every other day. And so it's really important for us to develop a really solid and explicit strategic plan in which we're not doing a little bit of this and then we stop, and a little bit of that and we stop, that we really understand what are the goals of the initiatives and the plan overall. I hope that explains it.
Yeah, and I'm going to just piggyback off of that and then jump on one of the other questions. So the peer-to-peer, I mentioned, that is something that actually is another organization in Minnesota that we met with. And when we decided to go use Dr. Jo Shapiro, she is nationally known for developing these peer-to-peer programs. So that's a good example of other organizations doing work. Similarly, Connect Groups, the foundation for that started at Mayo. So we are taking things that work, but I think the important thing is, from an improvement background, I have lived through not successful implementations where we just try to take something that worked over here and then stick it on top. You need to think about what works for us, what is sustainable for us right now and is meeting our needs. So it doesn't mean to say there aren't other things we'll glean from other organizations, but we've really tried to be deliberate to match solutions to our culture and receptivity. I just wanted to address the question for clinicians participating. It is all over the map. We have, you saw the comment, we have someone who's been here for 27 plus years and said this is one of the most meaningful things that they've done. We have newer clinicians. So it's across the board. And I think it's, some of these things, it's more of an individual thing where you're reaching out, but we've got people from all areas of the organization, as well as different levels of tenure participating in the activities, which is great to see.
One other thing that I would like to highlight also is that in general, there are many organizations that are coming at the work with this is kind of a top-down approach, saying this is what needs to get done. And what we see more and more, especially as the healthcare industry is changing and becoming more consolidated, is that we see that very successful programs really engage with their physician and clinician and healthcare workforce professional in developing that infrastructure across every step of the way, at every step of the way. I think one of the biggest things that we hear from the physician and clinician population is that, and the healthcare workforce professionals, is that they want to feel like they matter. And what that means is that their voice matters, that their experience matters, that their opinions matter. And so what I've seen is that organizations that are successful at this is when they engage in building infrastructures where that feedback loop is really strong.
Mhm.
And analyzing, keeping track of what people are feeling and what people are seeing and what people need is really important, a really important part of the work. And that's why we're really leaning into that ourselves.
Thank you both so much. And I think that one thing that from your feedback that is really apparent to me is that HealthPartners is very focused on hearing from the clinicians and the caregiver's voice and the formulation of their strategy, which is so important and helps really, like you had said, tailor it to the needs of our HealthPartners clinicians. I do have another question here. Of the clinicians who are currently participating in well-being offerings, are most newer practitioners or older clinicians also engaging?
Yeah, so that's kind of what I was speaking to earlier, that we've got a really broad mix of clinicians. So we have people who are tenured, very long term here. We've got people who are newer. We have leaders, we have non-leaders. So it's really been an opportunity for anyone to participate. And I think that, I think one of the things that's great is all of this is optional too. And so when you look at it and filling the need, and for example, I think we had the numbers in our first clinician town halls and that sort of feedback and connection point, over half of our clinicians participated in one of those calls. And so again, like sometimes I don't even get half of the people I need in a meeting that I need you to come to a department meeting, right? But people came to that. And so I think, again, just continuing to match what people are needing, how people are participating, with leaning into those strategies to support them. But yes, I would say if we felt like we were missing a population, like it was only people newer in their career or more established, we definitely want to identify opportunities for outreach and programs that support people at all points in their career, which with our enhanced clinician survey that we're using from the AMA organizational biopsy will also really help us identify some of those areas too.
And I just, just a very quick add on to that is that every time that we present to any clinician or in any space, really, for that matter, there's more engagement with our programs. The reality is that we are still a very, very, very small, we have a very small infrastructure, and we really are strapped for resources for everything that comes to us as requests. And that when and if we had more resources, that when we go out there, the interest, the engagement, it is really significant, both across the board, from, depending on their time in their careers, but also the more that we talk about how much our organization is investing and how much of a priority this is, the more that we impact the culture. And the reality is that in general, physicians and clinicians that are maybe have been practicing for a much longer time, just because of the different expectations, have less inclination to engage with some of these programs. But as we seep through the organizational connective tissue, really, as we engage with more and more clinicians and impact and influence that culture, we see more and more physicians and clinicians, regardless of their time in practice, engaging with our practice, with the program.
Thank you. And I do have another question if you have the time. Park Nicollet has an active retired physicians group. Could we tap into their knowledge on building physician fulfillment and that feeling of control of care?
Gwen, do you want to take that?
Yeah. Well, this is great. First of all, this is right off our annual plan. So for the organizational annual plan for the care group, one of the items it reads, focusing on hire to legacy. So this really, and some other organizations, so back to the question of, yes, other organizations have looked at the concept of how do you look at kind of the life cycle of a clinician from hire to retire? What does the onboarding look like? What do opportunities and supports look like throughout that period? Last fall, we started in primary care a pilot. We had feedback about some opportunities in the retirement process, and some of it was related to the kind of technical operational things, but also some of it was about, how might retirement look different? How might I stay on and be active in different things? I don't even know what those things might be or what that might look like. So we'll be expanding that work from that pilot to the rest of the organization, and then looking at a body of work to say from the time at which someone's hired, what do those key points look like to engage people? And then how do we offer opportunities to clinicians who are retiring? So, I had someone who said, I'd really love to work in the volunteer office. I don't see myself as the newspaper deliverer, but I'd love to be engaged in a little different way. And I said, you know what? I would love to have someone like you come and participate on an improvement event with me to offer a clinician opinion and some guidance while I'm not taking someone out of the clinic for a day. So I think going into this year, that is an organizational priority and something that we're looking at. I think, again, with resourcing, we need to be deliberate on which pieces we're leaning into, but excited to be able to engage in that way. Anything else, Natalia, on that?
No.
Thank you. And I have one final question for you both. First of all, thank you again for such a wonderful presentation and all of the amazing work you guys are doing for clinician well-being. Is there any one aspect of your clinician well-being program that you believe is the most impactful out of everything you guys have been working on?
I would say that the most impactful thing that we can do is to not think about clinician well-being as one thing. Because when we start thinking, or when we communicate with people, or when individuals start thinking, oh, there's one thing that my organization needs to do, or there's one thing that I need to do, right, to improve professional satisfaction, or move into from surviving to thriving, then we're shortchanging the need for investment in the work. And so the most important thing that we need to do is realize that there's a lot of small things, little things, and big things that we need to do to change a very complex issue and problem in a very, very complex industry. And so thinking about, there are many things that we can do, there are many things that we should do, and there are many things that we are not going to do because we need to invest in a very robust infrastructure, is the most important thing that we need to do.
So I will pick one of our children. I'll let Natalia give a beautiful high-level answer, and I'll actually pick two. So I'll say, from a numbers perspective, we have over 400 clinicians involved in our Connect groups, which is over 20%. So I think that to me speaks volumes that people are taking that time to have a meal and have a conversation with each other about professional, joy in medicine, and getting back to a lot of really things at the root and connecting at a personal level, which is so important. I would say, though, from something that signifies a cultural shift, it's the clinician town halls. And the fact that we have senior leaders, both at an organizational level and now moving into service line level, having open time for that bi-directional feedback. And usually the first one is a little bit crickets. But then the feedback is, I didn't realize they were actually going to take those kinds of questions from us. I feel like heard, that I have this opportunity, and that, people, they want to hear what I have to think. So I think that, especially in the age of COVID, where we've got a lot of virtual, and as we move into one care group and we've got leadership that's spread out, continuing those opportunities for those types of discussions are so important for people to connect at that human level as a group, and really be provided that opportunity to hear and say things with leadership. So I will pick those two children. They are all wonderful in their own way. But I think from a cultural shift signal and just sheer number of people who have been involved, those two, I think, are cornerstone in the work that we've started.
Thank you so much, both of you. And I love hearing that, because just like, you're the essence of the many different types of components of the clinician well-being is that connection, and just, really helping people connect on a deeper level and be able to relate to one another. So I think that's amazing. Thank you both for your time today and your expertise. Happy International Doctors Day to everybody. And if anybody has any other questions after this, is it okay, Quinn and Natalia, if I direct them your way?
Absolutely.
Yep.
Please do.
Awesome. Have a great day, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for inviting us.
Absolutely.